Since we've been talking about improving your email engagement success, let's talk a little bit about how to measure that success. This video will be a brief introduction to a term you might have heard of, KPIs, or Key Performance Indicators. Here are some you might want to consider. It's the rate at which recipients open your email. Open rates have changed a lot because of the Apple Mail privacy update released in 2021. Put simply, this update means users who utilize Apple Mail can decide to block you from seeing if they opened your email. So, long story short, it is true that opens are a little less telling these days. However, since plenty of people don't use Apple Mail, keeping an eye on open rates, especially compared to other emails you're sending, is useful. Regardless of how open rates have changed, they can be useful in determining how effective your subject lines are, if you're sending the right emails to the right candidates, or segmentation, the strongest and weakest emails in your sequence, what date and time is effective for certain segments, and more. However, that doesn't mean only paying attention to the open rate. Let's take a look at a few other metrics that can provide a more holistic view of your engagement success. I'm going to briefly mention two types of clicks. The click-to-open ratio. This is a measure of how many clicks you have based on how many opens you have. So essentially, if a user opens your email, how likely are they to click? The total click-through rate. This is the percentage of your total list of recipients that clicked on your email. Clicks are very useful, and as I'm sure you've already guessed, the two types of clicks provide quite different information from each other. It's okay to use both to see how your email engages with your overall audience, as well as how the body of your email is doing compared to your subject line. The click-to-open ratio is particularly helpful for that part. The main thing to worry about is knowing which kind of click-through rate you're looking at. If you don't know and it doesn't say, it's likely the total click-through rate. But it never hurts to ask your team and operations to confirm, if you have one. This is a measure of how many people actually reply to the email directly. As a recruiter, this is likely your most useful metric as you're trying to actively engage with candidates. Ensure that your response rate does not include auto-replies, since they aren't a good measure of interest. Again, reach out to your operations team if you have one, if you aren't sure if this is the case or not. I'll briefly describe two bounces. Hard bounces let you know that you've encountered a no good, very bad email. Opt them out immediately, you're barking up the wrong tree. These are usually more temporary, such as when a candidate's inbox is too full to receive more mail. You can try the email again later, but after too many email bounces, it will become a hard bounce. These are both very useful. List and data hygiene is super important, and bounces can tell you what steps to take. Hard bounces are definitely clear, but soft bounces can be tricky. Keep an eye out to see if this rate spikes at different times in the week or year. It could mean you should respond to candidates more effectively based on their schedule, and not catch them at high traffic times or when they're on vacation. This is the measure of how many people opt out of all your communications. This is very important. Unsubscribes let you know how your message is being received by the segment you have chosen. If you have a high unsubscribe rate, that means candidates found the email unproductive or maybe even annoying. Pay attention to this all the time, especially when you are trying something new or testing a new sender. It can really help determine the success of your new ideas. So we've gone over some of the major KPIs for email. This is by no means an exhaustive list, so please don't let this discourage you from tracking metrics that have proven useful to your team. But since we went over these, let's consider the context for a bit. How do they work together? It's not an exact science, but you can begin to problem solve after viewing your engagement data. Here's a couple of examples. If your opens are low and your bounce rate is high, perhaps you have a timing issue. Whether it's a vacation or a hectic schedule, the list you're using clearly has plenty of people who aren't currently monitoring their inboxes. If you have a killer open rate and your unsubscribes go up a lot, then maybe reconsider your subject line and how it aligns with your messaging. What about high responses and low click-through, or vice versa? This tells you how people are responding to your message in CTA. If you want one to be higher than the other, keep track of this to ensure people know what you want and are motivated to react in the way you hope they will. Of course, there are plenty more scenarios you will have to consider, but I hope this provides an introduction on how to start contextualizing the information you receive. And if there's something you're curious about and don't have information for, use your data to craft a test. KPIs are so useful, and they become even more important when we do some good old-fashioned detective work. Now that you've learned all about metrics, let's track how your learning is going with this quiz.